Hello, this is a video on the wonders of neutrality. And why am I making this video? Well, I think it's fair to say that human beings over the last few years are getting more stressed and depressed, and people are reporting very poor mental well-being. I think these are difficult things to prove. I've seen some information from the United States that people are finding it more hard now to have friends and relationships with people who do not share their political views. So basically, if you vote for one party in the States, you're less likely now to have a partner or a friend who votes for the other party. And this polarization has been increasing over the years. I can also just point to a Gallup poll, and it said that the world was sadder and more stressed out in 2021 than ever before. Of course, you can put a lot down to the pandemic, but I think a lot of us will agree that the pandemic maybe is over now, but the problems still persist. And even in my own life, I've noticed many times recently how many people that I have been acquainted with have told me that they're no longer friends with somebody else because they've had a political disagreement, and that has happened more times than I can remember in the last few months. You can see it in the language of the general discourse around politics and the world's news in general. You can point towards social media as well. Social media exposes us to more extreme views, and then other people reacting against those extremes and becoming more extreme themselves. So I do believe that the world is becoming more polarized, more depressed, more stressed, and having a worse mental wellness than was previously the case. And I could point to the post-war period of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s in the West and in emerging markets as well, as having better economic conditions where people could see their lives improving. And maybe since the 2000s and since the great financial crisis of 2007-8, people, especially young people, cannot see that trajectory whereby their lives will materially improve. So I do believe there are a lot of reasons why the human race is becoming more polarized, stressed, and with a worse mental health. Anger is a negative emotion. Anger and hate, they're negative emotions. So people will be unhappy by just seeing you wear a mask or seeing you not wear a mask. They'll be unhappy by seeing you be overweight or by seeing you be too slim. They'll be unhappy if a woman wears certain clothes or wears other clothes. People are getting offended easily, being more judgmental, and generally adding to the sort of argumentative polarization that we have. So what are we going to do about it? What's this video about, and how can we improve on the subject? Well, it's very simple, really. I practice and have done for a long time, not in any way in a saintly manner, but I do identify certain arguments that my acquaintances are having, and I view the stress and the depression that these people are under and conclude that neutrality is really the best way to go. You look at these people having an argument about whatever. It could be about the economy, it could be about politics, it could be about gender or culture wars or something to do with the pandemic, the mask situation or the vaccine situation. I look at these people and I wonder how informed either of them are about the situation. We get our news from various sources, and it's fair to say one person's news is different from another person's news. How reliable is the information they're getting? Now, well, before we get down that rabbit hole, I'd just like to say that ever since the ability to speak language, human beings, maybe they developed that 10 or 5,000 years ago, they developed the ability to explain the world, and not only the world, but abstract concepts of the world in language. That's when bias kicked in. Every opinion is biased. Every news source is biased. There is only subjective opinion. There isn't any objective reality, because everyone sees the world through their own subjective, biased opinion. At the moment, I'm looking this way. I'm not looking behind me. I don't know what's going on behind me. So I'm biased. So everything is biased. So that's the way I look at these arguments. I just think, well, it's just one bias against another. I don't know all the ins and outs of this particular discussion. I therefore would say that I'm neutral on it. And I don't want to judge anyone. I don't want to hate anyone for having a different opinion to me. People talk a lot about the bias in the media. As far as I'm concerned, the media is always biased. It can't be anything else. It's always going to come from one point of view. And you either agree with it or you don't. And even if you agree with it or you don't agree with it, you probably don't have the right information to have a reasonable opinion about it anyway. So I'm less concerned about the bias in the media, but what I think the media does is offer you a nice, simple idea that cuts through all the confusion and the polarization and the distortion you're seeing, and gives you ammunition to then go and fight your opponent and say, you're wrong, I'm right, make a judgment, feel better about yourself, I'm clever, they're stupid. And that just doesn't help you. It only helps you for 1 second. It only makes you feel better for that 5 seconds when you read that thing on the news and you say, oh, aha, I know, I'm right now. Those stupid people, they're wrong. I'm good, they're bad, I feel better, blah, blah, blah. It makes you feel better for a small period of time, but longer term, it'll make you more opinionated, more judgmental, and less inclined to understand. And I think because when I was at school, I didn't have a lot of friends. All through my life, I've always been attracted towards weirdos. I think that's a terrible thing to say. But I do see somebody that finds it difficult to get on with anyone. I see them as a bit of a challenge, and I would like to get to know that person better, because to me, they're interesting. So I've spent quite a lot of my life trying to get to know people who are just different. They might have the same background to me, but they're completely different people. They're completely different to everybody. And then trying to get into their shoes and walk around and see how they see the world from their point of view. Isn't it more interesting to try and understand people who are perfectly intelligent, just the same as you, but see the world in a completely different way? Isn't that more interesting? Isn't that better for you to try and understand something you don't understand than to go and retreat to the media and read a sentence that you think is a fact that makes out that you're right and they're wrong? What's better for your long-term mental health? Understanding more people, or taking one opinion, thinking it's clever, and ignoring everything else because you want to be right and you want everyone else to be wrong, so you can feel superior? Yeah, I told you I was more clever than that guy. I knew I was clever. I knew I was clever, and now this little sentence in this social media post has proved me right. So I'm not a saint. I do have my opinions, but I keep them close to my chest. And I treat my opinions with a pinch of salt. I do believe psychologists are right to say that human beings make instant decisions in terms of their emotions at that time. So on abortion, I'll make an emotional decision on what I feel about abortion, and then I go away and use my logic to try and find out more facts, quasi-facts, to show me that my emotional opinion was right in the first place. And that's how I use my brain. I don't use my brain to find out what's right and what's wrong. I use my brain to make myself feel better about the emotional decisions that I've already made. I think that's very true, which is why I'm very cautious about my own opinions. Am I right? When you've been around for as long as I have, you find your opinions change over the decades. And then you look at yourself and think, well, why did I hold that opinion? Why was I so steadfast in my opinion about something when I've changed it a few years later? And doesn't that make you more sympathetic towards other people who have different views to yourself? And doesn't it make it more important why you would want to understand other people and want to understand different viewpoints? There's always two sides to every story. Let's say thousands of years ago, the Nubians fought the Egyptians. And, you know, who was wrong, who was right in that conflict? Was it the Egyptians or the Nubians? I'm sure the Nubians, or what they're called, thought that they were right, and the Egyptians thought that they were right. One invaded the other, and then one said, oh no, you invaded first. Oh no, you invaded first. Those groups of people, the Nubians and the Egyptians, they probably mostly thought that they were right and the others were wrong. But who was right and who was wrong? You tell me. History, when it's written so far back, the historians don't tend to take sides. They only take sides when it's recent history. In recent history, we say, oh, those were bad, the Germans were bad. But at the time, and I believe in the 1960s, half of all Germans thought that they didn't start the Second World War and it wasn't their fault, they were defending themselves. And I'm not going to get into, you know, who's right and who's wrong, because for me, that's just another opinion. I know a lot of people will say, oh, come on, there is a right and wrong. I mean, it's wrong to murder people. Yeah, I know that. But if you look at what's happening in the world, the conversations and disagreements, the arguments, you know, it's more complicated than that. We all know it's wrong to kill people, but we all know that in human existence, there exist loads of arguments where we don't know who's right and who's wrong. And just picking sides before you know all the arguments, all the facts, which none of us ever know, I just think that increases your stress, increases your depression, and increases your unhappiness. I don't know if that made any sense. I don't know if that's going to help anybody. I don't even know why I'm making videos at the moment. But it's something that's been on my mind recently, and it's something that I wanted to share. And I also wanted your opinion. I would love to hear your opinion on what you think I should be making videos about. Am I wrong about this? Am I talking crap, or am I being too simplistic and stupid? I'd love to hear what you say. Thank you so much for listening. My name's Rob from robcubban.com. I'll see you in another video, and please let me know in the comments what you think, and please feel free to give me suggestions for content you'd like me to make in another video. Goodbye.